they were still alive. The rearguard commandos were still slogging their way up the beaches that morning when there occurred another of those scenes that would be remembered for years to come. It was heralded by a low drone that grew increasingly loud, throaty and menacing. A plane was heading for Sword Beach, a Focke-Wulf 190, and inside the cockpit was a German fighter ace whose flamboyant high spirits were matched only by those of Lovett himself. Joseph Pips Priller shared a number of traits with his lordship. Both were ruthlessly determined, both were professionals, both were showmen, and both men displayed no reticence when it came to self-publicity. Priller was a legend in the Luftwaffe. Appointed wing commander of the 26th Fighter Wing, he was short, chubby-faced, stocky and bronzed, with carefully oiled hair and a penetrating intelligence that was often deployed with engaging wit. When relaxed, he could be charming, yet Pips had a split personality. He was infamous for his violent temper that was deployed against anyone who stood in his way. He even tongue-lashed his superiors, but his insubordinate behaviour was tolerated because he displayed a bull-necked ferocity when attacking enemy planes. He developed his own unique technique for shooting down Allied aircraft, one that was dangerous but highly effective. He would hug the contours of the ground at a very low altitude before ascending like an arrow when he got whiff of his quarry. He would then sneak from above onto the tail of the lumbering Allied bombers before swooping hard and fast, knocking out 2 or 3 of them before plunging back to the earth at breakneck speed. It was a technique so successful that it had won him the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and sword. Priller might have reaped havoc on the beaches of Normandy, were it not for a catastrophic decision taken by his superior, General Werner Junk. Just a few days earlier, Junk had ordered the 3 squadrons under Priller's command to be transferred away from their airfields at Lille. One was moved to Reims, another to Toulouse, and the third to Metz. Junk's reasoning was that they would be closer to the areas being targeted by Allied bombers. Priller had exploded when he learned this news. "It's crazy to move the squadrons back in view of the fact we're expecting an invasion. If anything, they should be moved forward." In this, he was correct. Focke-Wulf planes needed to be stationed close to the action because they had a flying time of less than 2 hours. But Priller was overruled, and by the time of the Allied landings, his Lille squadron had been reduced to 2 planes, his own and that of his wingman, Sergeant Heinz Wodacek. The 2 of them had spent the previous night getting drunk on local brandy, leaving Priller with a crushing hangover. He fell into a prize rage when awoken with news of the invasion. "Now you've really dropped it," he fumed at the staff officer on the phone. "I only have 2 planes. What the hell do I do now?" "Get up there," was the blunt reply. "Do what you can." Priller was in despair. A golden opportunity to strike at the Allies from the sky had been squandered. He and Sergeant Wodacek were later described as weeping as they ran for their planes. They were perhaps also weeping on account of their sore heads. Priller was determined to wreak as much damage on the Allied landings as possible, even though his mission was little short of suicidal. "We can't afford to break up," he warned Wodacek. "We'll have to go into the invasion area alone, and I doubt we're going to come back." The Luftwaffe communications were so pitiful that he was given no details about the landings. He knew only that they were taking place somewhere around Caen. But it did not take him long to spot the invasion once airborne. "Jesus," he said over the radio to Wodacek. "Look at it. Look at this show." As he circled through the breaking cloud, he was dumbfounded by the scale of what was taking place on the beaches below. The whole fleet of ships, landing craft going back and forth, soldiers on the beaches. In happier times, it would have been a fighter pilot's dream. The sky, too, was filled with Allied aircraft. Indeed, there were so many of them that Priller knew he needed to attack hard and fast if he was to survive. He decided to make just one pass over the beach he was flying over Sword, and then head back to the aerodrome at full speed. To this end, he plunged his craft into a stomach-churning dive, swooping downwards at a top speed of 400 miles per hour, down to an altitude that he later claimed, not very convincingly, to have been not more than 10 feet from the ground, so low that he could even see the faces of the men on the beaches. He blitzed the shoreline with bullets before pulling the nose of his plane hard out of its dive in order to get himself airborne again. It was a moment to be savoured. As the BMW engine thrust into gear, the entire plane shuddered as it climbed at a gravity-defying 15 metres a second. Priller was soon back in the clouds, closely trailed by Wodacek. The two of them then headed directly to Pointe-Noire airfield, just to the north of Paris, as they'd agreed in advance. Priller was staggered to find the airfield completely deserted. Goering's much-vaunted Air Force was nowhere in sight. There were no planes on the field. There was no equipment on the field. He searched through all the aerodromes and cabins and eventually located an elderly Luftwaffe major sitting alone in a hut furnished with one table, 2 chairs, and 2 telephones, neither of which appeared to be working. The major seemed to know nothing whatsoever about the invasion, nor did he display any signs of alarm. "Get ready!" blasted Priller at the top of his voice. "Get gasoline! Get supplies! Get food!" "Yes, Colonel! Yes, Colonel!" Priller got a call through to his 2nd Fighter Corps and raged down the phone. "I'm alone!" he screamed, "and I can't do anything at all!" Still suffering from his hangover, he slammed down the receiver and collapsed into one of the chairs, absolutely tongue-tied with fury. Matters were scarcely helped by the fact that he'd run out of cigarettes. He was fortunate that he had a box of black cigars in the cockpit of his plane, and he now chain-smoked his way through the lot, a less than ideal cure for a hangover. As he did so, he lounged in a chair, wishing to God he could find himself a drink. While Lord Lovett and the soldiers of 6th Commando were surging inland, a sharp firefight was underway at the seafront casino in River Bella. This architectural oddity had the air of an oversized villa, with a stack of tiled roofs and a multi-tiered belvedere that acted as a beacon for those at sea. But much of the building had been destroyed when the Germans transformed it into a fortified bunker. Where once it had robbed men of their fortunes, now it was designed to rob them of their lives. The capture of the casino had been assigned to No. 4 Commando, with